Joining me now is Dara Lind. She's reported on immigration issues for well over a decade. She's now a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council. Dara, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. You have written extensively about this endless cycle of enforcement and deterrence initiatives, the crisis and crackdowns, if we can say it that way. Sometimes these efforts work for a few months. It's not really a solution for us as a country.
No, there's what we call a wait and see period, right? Once policy changes, would-be migrants, smugglers, et cetera, will wait for a while, see how it's actually being implemented. And then once word of mouth starts coming down that some people are getting through or that there is some way to beat the system, then people will start trying again. Even if most people are getting rejected, if there's any positive messaging and smugglers know how to amplify any positive message, people will start coming. And so that's why we kept seeing under Title 42, when there was this policy of, immediate expulsion, people would just try again because they knew that at some point they could successfully evade border agents, even if it took getting caught multiple times to do it.
So what's the this is a ridiculous question to ask you in a small segment, but writ large, what should we be thinking about as how to actually solve this problem? And I think there's two issues, right? We've bunched up immigration policy and border security, and that confuses the issue a little bit.
No, absolutely. And what's particularly worrisome about these negotiations is that some of the proposals on the table would not have any effect on the border, but would affect immigrants already living in the United States, such as a proposal to expand deportation without trial nationwide. But even if you're just talking about border security, the fact of the matter is that any policy change you're going to implement, you're going to need resources to do it. You can't just wave a wand and have people not show up at the U.S.-Mexico border. You have to put resources into detaining them, deporting them. And so once you've committed to spending more resources, there are ways that you can you can make the system operate better by expanding the resources that exist in the current system without also creating this churn of policy change that creates confusion, that creates a lot of inconsistency and arbitrariness, that makes it possible for paperwork errors to separate families, to accidentally deport people, all the things that you get when Border Patrol agents are being tasked with a constantly changing menu of policy. If you just expand the resources we currently have in place, you can get the more efficient throughput at the early part of the process without creating all of that extraneous chaos.
So this past May, the American Immigration Council, where you're a senior fellow, put out a 60-page report. It's got 13 very doable recommendations. It's called Beyond a Border Situation, How to Build a Humanitarian Protection System That Won't Break. And part of the introduction reads as follows. Politicians must abandon a fantasy of short-term solutionism and acknowledge that only sustained investment over a period of time can realistically address these 21st century challenges. Therefore, short-term action must focus on establishing a viable path toward a better system. In the long term, with significant investment, we can create a flexible, orderly, and safe asylum process. I get that, but there are a whole bunch of people in the United States, particularly in the Republican Congress, who don't want a better asylum system.
I agree that if you think about it in terms of a better asylum system would be a more welcoming one, that is a difference of values. The problem is that because, as you said, this has all been tied up in the idea of border security, and there is widespread agreement on both sides. And to be clear, the things you mentioned in your monologue, all of those proposals are things the Biden administration also supports. So there's agreement on both sides that you have to change asylum policy to improve border security. But as long as you've decided that border security is your first goal, there are things you can and should be doing that will improve processing, that will improve border management. And that needs to be the basis for then creating a more flexible, more responsive humanitarian protection system, because the current system doesn't serve asylum seekers just as much as it doesn't serve the interests of border management.
I know it's not simple at all, but it sounds very reasonable coming from your lips. Dara, thank you as always for joining us. Dara Lind is a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council.